grandma. Can't wait to commune with her. Can't wait to get up with her. It's the Alabama Church Girl. So what's the topic for this week? Oh man, you're kidding me. The church folks have issues again? Well, you know I love you, but we gotta get it right. I'm PR for the preacher, publicist for the people. All right, Lord, you gotta be with me on this. I feel like Jeremiah. I know the people don't want to hear it, but it's like fire in my bones and I gotta let it out. Lord, when I open up my mouth, you speak for me. Let me have no fear of their faces. All right, y'all. Here we go. It's the Alabama Church Girl. Beep, beep, toot, toot. She's going live on Facebook. Beep, beep, toot, toot. Hey, good people. It's your Alabama Church Girl here. First, giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. To all the leaders, saints, and friends, please welcome, welcome, welcome on in. All right, this is the day that I have been waiting so patiently for. I know that you've probably been excited too. Today we are discussing our taboo topic of the day is the Lowndes County, the Road to Black Power documentary. Oh, I've been highly anticipating this day. Highly, highly, highly anticipating this day. And I know that you have been, as well as your friends. So go ahead and tap your friends on the shoulder, touch thy neighbor, and say, neighbor, get on in here. You don't want to miss this conversation. It's going to be hot. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be good. Okay. So my intentions on this evening is to make sure that I am challenging the mindset, the oppressive mindset of the church. I want to make sure that I am challenging the oppressive mindset, challenging the oppressed mentality, and the misguided behaviors in the Black church. So please, as we go on this journey, keep in mind that it's my intention to see the church do better. It is my intention to see the Black church do well and to thrive once again. It is my intention to see Black church become the positive bedrock for the community that it once was. So let's have this discussion on Lowndes County, the documentary. It's on Peacock TV, shown on Peacock TV. If you don't have Peacock, you can rent the documentary if you haven't seen it already. I think the price is like $4.99 to view it. The documentary is a little over an hour long. So it's not that long, but it is power packed, and you definitely don't want to miss out on the opportunity to view this documentary. Um, I came across it by happenstance, honestly. I think it just came up in my algorithm on YouTube. And for those of you who are on YouTube with me on today, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining. And please hit that like button and share this. Share this with your family. Share it with your friends. Tell them, hey, y'all don't want to miss these conversations. This lady over here from Alabama called herself the Alabama Church Girl. She's really having some thought-provoking conversations about the taboo topics of the church that you do not want to miss. And if you happen to miss them live, you definitely can go back and watch them again on the replay in YouTube or on Facebook. So, as I was stating, this documentary, when I saw it in my algorithm, I definitely was intrigued because it's so close to home. I've shared once before about how Black history has become so prevalent in my life as an adult because it wasn't in my life as a child. I do greatly respect the school system that I came up through. Small town, but a great school system. I was an honor student in school, but I graduated from high school, went to Tuskegee University in the honors program. And once I got to prestigious Tuskegee University, I learned that I knew very little, next to nothing about Black history. So, in discovering that I went to school, I was in the honors biochem program, and I knew very little about Dr. George Washington Carver. I knew enough that my mom had encyclopedias at the house, and I think she had like one big, huge book on Black history that I just used to read. Um, I'm a church girl. We didn't have any cable because, the cable brought the sin in the house. So I enjoyed reading as my way of escape out of the house, out of just being at home and at church. I read a whole lot. So I would read, the what was interesting to me in the encyclopedias and in these big research books that my mom had. She was a nurse, so she had all kind of stuff on science or whatever, whatever. Anywho, I know I'm talking fast, but it's a lot that I want to cover in this discussion on tonight. But the only thing that I knew about George Washington Carver was what I read in the encyclopedia. And I even recall, I think maybe in junior high school, I recall beep beep toot toot. Thank you, Miss Dr. Oliver. Uh, I recall one particular like SAT type exam that we took in school. I was the only person that answered the questions regarding Dr. Carver correctly. And the teacher was shocked, like, how did you know this information? I was like, I read it. But it should have been a shock to me. Why aren't y'all teaching this information, but you tested me on it? It was like a standardized test, some type of standardized test like that. But anywho, I also was a part of the Air Force ROTC, and I didn't know anything about Daniel Chappie James. How stupid do you think I felt? I mean, here I am calling myself an honor student. I was in the honors biochem program at Tuskegee. Um, I'm going into science at the school known for science and science experiments, and I don't even know anything about the greatest, one of the greatest scientists that to ever come through this school. I knew absolutely nothing about Booker T. Washington, nothing at all. So, in my state of ignorance at Tuskegee, I vowed to myself that I would do everything in my power to learn as much Black history as possible. Because also, and while I was at Tuskegee University, what I learned was um, I grew up in a small town, and growing up in that small town, the high school was predominantly white at the time, and my perspective on life and my community, my surroundings, was a bit whitewashed. Um, I did not know that there were such elite African Americans in this world, this big old huge world. Other than, and like I said, we didn't have any cable, so it wasn't much representation that I could even see on TV. Um, I didn't understand that there was so much more that I could even achieve or strive for as an African American female. Not only am I African American, but I also am female. So my view and my perception of myself was limited because I did not know this history. I did not know this history, and I was not exposed to this rich culture of Blackness until I went to Tuskegee University. So, in saying that, I felt not only ignorant to the fact that I didn't know it, but I also felt like a little bit betrayed by my own people, that how could we live so close to all this history and y'all not tell me about it. So anytime I find an opportunity to learn and study, every time me and my husband travel, every time my family travels somewhere, I want to know the Black history of that location, because our history is everywhere. It's not just Alabama, but Alabama has such rich history. I know that this is the Bible Belt. I know that this is called the Black Belt. But I mean, when I say this soil is rich with history, it's rich with history. If you go down to the EJI here in Montgomery, Alabama, you will see how rich the soil is. There is actual dirt soil in the EJI that tells stories of those who've been lynched, those who have sacrificed the in the utmost way for our community, for us to be able to thrive. So when I came across this documentary, the Lowndes County documentary, right up the street from where I live now, I live here in Montgomery, Alabama, the capital city. Lowndes County is what, maybe 25, 30 minutes away from me. And there's a documentary about stuff that I didn't know. Once again, I've heard some things about Lowndes County. I kind of knew about Tent City. I kind of knew, but I want to know in detail and in depth. So of course, I was definitely very, very much so interested in learning about this documentary. Beep beep toot toot. Hey there. See, we got some great people joining us on this evening. Hey, Dr. Debbie and brother. Hey, brother, guess what? I got my other sister with me in the studio tonight. But anywho, so back to the business at hand. Um I went out and I went to the library. I think I told y'all about it. I went to the library and got all these wonderful, wonderful books on Lowndes County. Once I saw the documentary, I went and got all the books. So tonight I want to feature this one particular book called Bloody Lowndes. And the reason why I want to feature this book is because the author of the book, I don't know if you can see if there's a glare on it, Hassan Jeffries. He's also one of the commentators, one of the narrators in the documentary. And he tells such a rich story. Please, please, please go and get, if you didn't know, go and get this Bloody Lowndes from the library. You'd be better off purchasing it, because if you're like me, I like to write and make notes and all of that, and I can't do it with a library book. But go and purchase the book off of Amazon or wherever you buy your books. But it's a great read. It's a great read. It's a rich, rich, rich story. And if you're sensitive, you might want to take it in parts, because if you're like me, I'm an empath, and death hurts me, pain hurts me. I feel it deeply for you. So take it in doses. Bite it in doses. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay. But anywho, so Lowndes County, I went and got the documentary, and I started watching it. As I started, the documentary starts off with Bloody Sunday. I'm sure that most people now are familiar with Bloody Sunday. I'm sure the millennials, the Gen Zs are familiar with Bloody Sunday now, because there's a annual march paying homage to those who experienced the Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday coming across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where you see Snick, you see Dr. King, you see our good old homeboy. Goodness, why is his name escaping me just that quick? From Troy, Alabama, kicking up good trouble. Go back. Just that quickly, I lost his name. But he's our homeboy, Dr. Representative John Lewis. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Counted in brain, not my heart. But John Lewis, as a young man crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, being met by state troopers, basically bludgeoning those who were basically peacefully protesting. Well, they were on their way marching from Selma to Montgomery, and once they came across that Edmund Pettus Bridge, they had media out there capturing these state troopers, beating these people because they did not want them to march. And what's crazy is, and we're going to talk about this a little bit because it's aligning. I don't know, God had me going in this direction, but he's aligning what is happening current time with what has happened in the past. You see these state troopers coming, meeting these peaceful protesters and beating them because they did not want them to protest peacefully. All they were doing was marching. And that's the opening of the documentary. But then the opening goes from that experience to this elderly female. Her name is Miss Ella Baker. Miss Ella Baker, um, looks like she might be in her 70s, maybe even early 80s. You know, black don't crack. But she starts telling the story of what was happening in 1965 when when SNCC was in Lowndes County, Alabama, trying to make fetch happen. SNCC was in Lowndes County, Alabama, trying to make sure that the black people in that county, which happened to be the blackest county in the state, it was also one of the poorest counties in the state. I believe that the population was 80% black. But at the time, she tells the story of how there were no black political representatives in that county. The county was 80% black. There were no black cops. There were no black representatives. There was no one black in any position of authority whatsoever. County commissioners, board of education, nobody black. Everybody, the 20% of whites that made up the county were also the people that were placed in the position of authority. We also know, if we have studied enough history, we also know that during those times of the 60s, early 60s in particular, Jim Crow was heavy. Yes, black people had received freedom from slavery, but after they were freed from slavery, then there was enacted these black codes and Jim Crow that prevented black people from being considered equal, and being treated with dignity and respect as anyone else in the community. So Jim Crow was heavy, especially here in Alabama. We know about the sundown towns. If you don't, go ahead and study it. Write these vocabulary words down. The sundown towns. Don't get caught driving or traveling in these particular towns when the sun goes down, because you're liable to end up hanging from a tree. We understand. We know about the whites only fountains. We know about the whites only restaurants. We know about go around back to get your meal while others can walk through the front door and sit at the counter. We know about that. We understand what was happening. I'm setting the scene for you, because I want you to understand why the movement was so major in Alabama, right here, just 20, 30 minutes away from me, right here in Alabama. Why is this important and pertinent to the Black church? Because that's what we talk about over here on the Alabama Church Girl, the taboo topics of the church. Well, we're going to get there. All right. So at this time, we see that there was tension, of course, in the community, because black people, as Ella Baker is telling the story, the black people wanted to vote. They wanted an opportunity to vote. But what the situation was, as another narrator comes into the frame, his name was Arthur Nelson. He's narrating from the pews of a church. He starts telling the story of how he, as a young man, was still picking cotton. And no one black was allowed to vote, even though they had rights. They were not allowed to vote. That it was the intimidation factor was preventing black people from even trying to register to vote. Black men had the right to vote, but they were subject to intimidation if they tried to go register to vote. Now look how this plays out. This is how, when we talk about systemic issues, this is how the system plays against to continue the oppression of the community. All right, so if he's as a child picking cotton, that means that his family is picking cotton as well. So that his family were sharecroppers. Well, if you know anything about sharecropping, what sharecropping does, I know a little bit. I'm not an expert on it, but I know a little bit. My great grandmother was a sharecropper, and my grandmother helped her pick cotton. My grandmother helped her pick in other people's farms, the harvest. And what happens is you, as the oppressed people, are living on someone else's land in someone else's house, and you buy from someone else's store on credit. Well, once you pick a certain amount of cotton, of harvest, of whatever it is, corn, peas, snap peas, we know about this. If you black in Alabama, you born anywhere in the up until the 80s, you understand what I'm talking about. But you pick a certain amount of crop, then that pays for your stay, that takes care of the debt that you owe to the owners of this property. Well, the intimidation factor comes in, as Arthur Nelson is explaining to us, that if the father or the mother wanted to go downtown and exert their right to register to vote, I just told y'all, everybody that was in any position of authority were white, and they were usually the ones that had the property, had the housing, owned the stores. So the intimidation factor comes in. You came down here, you were bold enough to show your face and write your name down on this paper to try to register to vote. Okay, now I got to kick you out your house. I no longer have any place for you to be employed. Which, if you don't have employment, now you don't have a place to live, you and your family. You see how that works? You see how the jerking of the chains? And if you still want to get crunk, you might just find the barrel of the gun in your face or in your ear, or maybe your children, or maybe your wife got raped, something to that nature. These are the things that were happening. So we have these other narrators that join in. And like I said, once again, Hassan Jeffries is the main narrator, telling us how bad it was in Lowndes County, Bloody Lowndes. It's called Bloody Lowndes for a reason, because there were so many people that went missing. There were so many people that, hey, they were on the job one day and the next day they're never to be found again. There was also a couple of white females that came on the screen. One of them, let's see, tells a story. I think this was Catherine Coleman Flowers. She said that she grew up in Lowndes County, and she knew it to have no, I'm sorry, wrong woman. Margaret Davis. Margaret Davis grew up in Lowndes County, and she described it. She was a white female, so her experience of Lowndes County was different. But she described it as a peaceful place, and it was ideal. And if you know anything about the culture and the climate at that time, generally the Jim Crow was enacted to protect white women. So of course, her experience would be ideal because there's a whole system set up to protect her demographic. But then she says that she didn't have a whole lot of interaction with black people. She said that her family had some black people that worked for them, i.e., they may have been sharecroppers on their land. And she said they were nice. They were nice, and she was nice to them. But that was all that she knew about them, was that they worked for her family. She tells a story that the first time that she experienced any type of violence and understood that there was something different in her community, she was 17 years old. Her and one of her girlfriends were driving down a dirt road, and they see a young man waving at them. And she thought that he was trying to get them to let him get a ride. And her friend got very upset about it. And she said that it was just not a thing to her. They just kept driving. But the friend got upset because how dare he try to wave us down for a ride. So she said the friend went home and told her family. And the next day she found out that that young man had been lynched. And that was her first experience of knowing that something is not right. Some other stuff is going on in this community that, I had been kind of naive to, or unaware, or gullible to, in my experience. So anywho, um the narrators began to explain to us how Snick what came about, or came to the town. So what happened was, I want to make sure I get these names right. John Jackson was the one that, one of the narrators, that told us about how many black people came up missing. People lost their whole families because they wanted to register to vote. Um, Catherine Coleman Flowers, she was a black woman that, she looked like she was maybe in her 50s, maybe a little younger than a baby boomer, maybe a little bit. But she told the story of how her family, like I said, black woman, they grew up with guns in every corner of the home. And it was necessary because at any given time, they could have had an Emmett Till experience where somebody just ride up on you and say, "Hey, I want to kill this person out your family tonight," and that's just the way it was. Lowndes County had a reputation. She says that Lowndes County had a reputation of violence, and she knew this as young as being a kid. So her experience directly opposes what Margaret's experience was, and I'm expressing this very assertively because it tells a story of why our country, at this stage in the game, is so divided in its perception of my country, tis of thee. Is it sweet land of liberty? Because Margaret has liberty, but does Catherine? All right, so moving forward, John Hewlett. John Hewlett grew up in Lowndes County, but he had moved away. And when he moved away and went to school, he ended up in Birmingham, Alabama. I think they said he was a lawyer. Y'all go watch the documentary, because it's a lot of characters, a lot of narrators, and I'm trying to make sure I get it right. But I think he was a lawyer. But he had to come back to Lowndes County for some family situation. But while he was there, he wanted to go and register to vote. While he had been in Birmingham, he had joined the NAACP. Well, of course, joining an organization like that, you feel an allegiance to this movement that was already happening outside of Alabama. But once he moved back to Lowndes County, outside of Lowndes County, moving back to Lowndes County, even though he may not have had his fellowship of community of the NAACP in Lowndes County, he was still a part of what the NAACP had already started elsewhere in a bigger city, Birmingham, Alabama, to be specific. So John Hewlett said he was going to register to vote. Who's going to stop me? Who's going to stop me, boo? In the words of Sheree, who going to check me, boo? So he gets down, and the sheriff is like, who this Negro think he is? So he said, "Listen, if you sure you want to register to vote?" He's like, "Yeah, this is what I came to do." And the sheriff said, "Well, don't you know how to knock?" He said, "I didn't come here to knock. I came here to register to vote." And the sheriff said, "Well, if you're going to register, then you need to put your name down on this piece of paper." I'm telling you, I already explained to you what that meant. That was a part of the intimidation factor. But John Hewlett was smart enough to understand that there is strength and there is power in numbers. So John Hewlett, what he did was he gathered up a collective, a group of Black people, many, and every single day he made a commitment that we are going down here every day and we're going to register to vote. It's more of us than there are of them. So what are they going to do? Kill all of us? Because who's going to do the labor work? That's the way his mentality was. And why is it important? Because why is this relative to the taboo topics of the church? Because where were they organizing? Where do you think? At the church. Every single Sunday evenings, he said. Him and I think Arthur were telling the story of how Sunday evenings, church for Sunday evening meant organizing. Wednesday night, it was not just Bible study, it was organizing, because there is more to us needing to fill our soul. Our souls are full. Our souls are full. Our souls are full. We understand the Bible, we understand the word, but we also understand that we are living in a world. What good is it? What good is it for us to be so heavenly minded that we are no earthly good? I'll pause. You can answer in the comments. I just want to know, church, church, and I'm gonna put the link in the chat in case you might want to come up and participate in this discussion. Church, church, black church. When are we going to get our mindset back on the fact that black people are experiencing things in this world that we cannot have blinders on? We cannot be so heavenly minded that we are no earthly good. We cannot. Black church, we're losing people because they're saying, I'm spending all my time, all my money in this church, and it is not benefiting my life. Because when I go home, I still catch hell. When I go home, the blinders come off. In fact, before I could even leave the parking lot good, I might get caught up and snatched out of my car. Now, I told you the setting, the timeline for this documentary. They said they go and tell the story of early 1960s. Here we are.
One winter, a family of ground squirrels was settling
Siri,
into their tree
please
to hibernate,
hush.
and Kiddo Squirrel was not happy about having to stay out the winter.
Siri
Listen,
didn't
Kiddo,
want me to tell the
said Little
story.
Squirrel. We'll tell you when it's okay to go out.
Hey
Fine,
Siri,
said
stop.
Kiddo, in a way that meant.
Oops. Anywho, before we could even get out of the parking lot good, we might find ourselves in a situation like the young man just did. Snatched out of my car and bludgeons. But the church is not talking about it. The church don't want to deal with it. And I don't know, somebody said, well, it's some churches, not all churches. You're right. You're right. But I live in Alabama where there are far more rural, small towns with these small storefront churches, with these very small congregations where the pastors, the leadership in the church feels such an autonomy that they have diverted from the mission, so deeply divested that people are leaving in the droves. Why do I need to go up there? Why? Why do I need to go and say? Because everything that pastor is saying, first of all, a lot of what he's saying conflicts with what I read. And all the things that he's saying for me to make sure that my lifestyle is pure and holy. I'm pure and I'm holy. I'm still catching hell. I'm pure and I'm holy and I'm still catching hell. This is not heavenly. My experience on earth has been hell. My day to day, I have so much anxiety from day to day because I don't know if I step out my front doors if I'm going to make it back home. I have so much anxiety because I don't know if I send my kid to that school, are they going to be shot up in the school? I have so much anxiety because if I sit in your pews, am I protected enough in your pews not to get murdered by a mass shooter? That's why pastors, preachers, mothers, missionaries, we cannot overlook what people are experiencing in their life. We cannot get so caught up on focusing on what people are doing in their bedroom because that seems to be the going conversation across the pulpit. We cannot get so focused on what people are wearing on their bodies and not look at the experience that they are having in life. That's not what Jesus would do. It's just not. If you go and read What Jesus really did, he came here to heal the sick. He came here to raise the dead, those dying things. You know what? Had Jesus there, the man that was sitting by the pool of the Bethesda, he wouldn't have been there for 38 long years. He wouldn't have. If the preachers, the Pharisees were paying attention to his condition. 38 years. He's in the same condition. You keep stepping over him. Come here, good Samaritan. We read in the book over and over again about how it's just not right. He pointed out to us, Jesus did, with his parables of how those who are considered the leaders in church, leaders in the temple, overlook the conditions of the people. But Jesus said, this is who I came for. I came to meet the needs of the people. You don't have a savior that doesn't feel the infirmities of your heart. So why are preachers and leaders so immune to your humanity? Let me get back to the documentary because I just had to get on my stump and preach just a little bit. Okay. I got to remind you, this is why it's the taboo topic of the church on this evening. All right. Make sure you're sharing this with your family and your friends. Thank you. Back to the documentary. They were organizing in the church. The church became the mission building, and the church overflowed with people. Last week, we did our second part conversation on culture. What is Black culture? Why did we discuss what is Black culture? We discussed what is Black culture because if we don't know who we are, we're subject to just take on the identity of any and everybody and do any and everything the way they do it. We talked about this last week. And I'm shamed to have to come back and say I told you so because I don't like the situation with what's the guy named Tyree Nichols in Memphis. But we just talked about this last week about how some Black people take on the projection of violence from others and think that that's what we do. That's not what we do. That's not who we are. That's not our culture. Take us all the way back to the motherland, and we'll see that's not our culture. That's us trying to portray the same image as our colonizer. That's us trying to portray the same image as our masters. That's not who we are. Taking whips and beating on our children and beating on our wives and beating on each other. No, ma'am, Pam. Why have we taken on that identity? That's why it's important for us to know who we are. What is our culture? What do we do? Who did God create us to be? Let them do them. But we need to do us and do it well and be effective in what we do. And that's why Representative John Lewis is so important. And this movement at Lowndes County was so important because what they determined is we are going to do us. Bringing in Dr. Martin Luther King was such a profitable, such a profitable decision to their movement because King was able to very clearly articulate what the foundations that they had already laid. Stokely Carmichael, I keep saying doctor, but Representative John Lewis. Um, there were others, females. Of course, Hewlett was with them, but there were other females. Come on, come on, come on, give me those names. Ruby Sales, Jennifer Lawson, Judy Richardson. They had already laid down some foundations on we are going to protest and we're going to do it peacefully. I keep mentioning Representative John Lewis because he was very adamant about being peaceful. He was the one that was teaching others how to go in and peacefully protest at the diner counters and teach them how to take the beating and not fight back. Don't allow your emotions to get out of hand. And that's why I say, let's talk about in the church, what is our culture? Because we can't have emotional response just because they're doing them. Let them do them. But when we understand that there's a God that fights every single battle for us, church, when we begin to preach truly that vengeance is mine, says the Lord, and I will repay, when we really begin to pray effectively, understanding that there's a power here on earth that we have in remaining in our peaceful place, and the heavens will open up with all the gods and the ancestors will fight on our behalf. When we really understand that, that's why I mentioned on last week that we should not discredit the traditional African religions. Don't discredit them. Because if you really study those ATRs and look at the Bible, you'll see an alignment. You will see an alignment in the Old Testament and in the New. Because even the heavens say that we have a host, a host, a great cloud of witnesses. Doesn't that sound like ancestors to me? It sounds like ancestors to me. When Jesus said, excuse me, back in the Old Testament, going to Joshua, Joshua was told Joshua had to go fight the battle, and Joshua was scared. How can we defeat them? There are so many more than us. Don't worry about it. Because the heavens opened up and showed him that you got folks fighting on your behalf that you don't even see. There are angels out here fighting for you. There is a spirit in heaven. There is a God, a great cloud of witnesses fighting for you on your behalf. It's going to work in your favor. My young lady, another great book for you to get, Kimberly Jones. She came to the forefront of national attention during after the George Floyd murder that went viral. She had a very viral moment. I believe there was a Target, I can't remember what city, that was set on fire, and a camera came to her saying, well, why are they burning down their community? And it was meant to be sarcastic. It was meant to be a little shady. And she begins to tell that, how can we win? How can we win when we don't own this stuff? We don't own this stuff. But in her she's now written a book, How Can We Win? Y'all see this? Kimberly Jones. How can we win? When we know that everything around us is set up for us to fail, it's set up for us to be continuously oppressed and continuously defeated. Men and women of God, how can we win? We might get into that same mentality. How can I win, God? How can I win? I'm out here striving to be the best that I can be. I'm doing everything I know to do right, and I still am being murdered. I'm still stressed out on if my child will make it home just because he's young, black, and tall. Just because his appearance that you gave him, God. Others will say, well, I felt intimidated by him, using that reverse psychology. I felt intimidated by him, so I had to murder him. Really? God, how can we win? Go and search up the viral moment of Kimberly Jones. How can we win, Kimberly Jones? Once we align the mission on earth, so as it is on earth as it is in heaven. Once we align those missions, it's important, church, that we pay attention to what's happening in the people's lives, because ministry is for the people. Ministry is to meet the needs of the people. God's people, Black church, Black people need God to move on this social front in a major way. This documentary on Lowndes County and the road to Black power, people get so caught up in Black power and what someone else's definition has made it out to be, something ugly, something nasty, something that is supposed to be a superiority complex, similar to the other word of power. But that's not what this movement was about in Lowndes County. This movement in Lowndes County was Black people saying we are just as human as anyone else. And I am empowered, not oppressive, but I am empowered to stand in my rights, to stand in my God given rights, to be respected just like everyone else, to operate and move in this world just as fine and at liberty as anyone else. Catherine should be free to have a peaceful and liberated childhood, just like Margaret. Your child is no better than mine. God, the God that we talk about, we preach about, we serve, says that he has no respecter of persons. So why is my Catherine having to bow down to respect your Margaret, but your Margaret can dissipate and destroy my Catherine's life? Church, church leaders, Black pastors, Black preachers, if you are not taking those blinders off and focusing on the needs of the people, your ministry is going to sink. It's going to fail. It's as simple as that. I tell you all the time about my uncle DC saying the church is a sinking ship. The church is, and I was like, no, 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 no. But I understand what he was saying and why he said it. Those ministries that preaching holiness of hell, and taking up 15 offerings. You got 7 different. I went to a ministry. I told y'all I'm going to a different ministry every Sunday. I went to a ministry that had 7 different ways to give. We can Givelify, we can Cash Out, we can Venmo, we can Zelle, we can write a check, we take cash, we take credit, we take all this. Take. But name me 7 different ways that you're giving back to the community. Can you? Will you? Show me. Where are your 7 ways that you're benefiting the youth? Where are your 7 ways that you are benefiting the elderly? Where are your 7 ways that you are benefiting? And it brings me back to another point that we made on last week. Go back if you haven't, shameless plug. If you didn't watch, if you didn't participate in the video on last week, in our live on last week, go back and watch it. What is Black culture? Because we talked about also on last week that diversity is so necessary. Ministers, leaders, let's also tackle this situation. In this documentary, Lowndes County, The Road to Black Power, the narrators tell the story on how the church was overflowing with people. They had to get another overflow unit to house these people. And the SNCC that was coming in from Atlanta, coming in from Birmingham, coming in from all these other places outside of Lowndes County, outside of the local ministry, they came in looking different. They had their bell bottoms, they had their big afros, they had their crop tops. And they talked about, they did mention how the mothers would, kind of give them funny looks. The mothers of the church, they're still wearing the dollies on the head, and the gloves on their hands, and zipped up all the way to under their chin, skirts all the way down to the floor. I know it had to be happening in the 60s, because I'm a young woman. I was born 1979, and baby, my mama had me dressed up like that because she was one of the mothers that believed. She was born in 1960, so she believed in and keeping yourself looking pure and holy. And to me, just I told y'all, moment of silence for our fashions. Jesus, God, I thank you for deliverance now. Anywho, my point is being diverse. Pastors, leaders, we got to get out of this mentality that everybody has to be look like me, talk like me, dress like me, walk like me. If they don't, then I'm going to bash them over the pulpit. No ma'am, no sir. Because what you're going to miss out on is an opportunity for the church to be that wheel that moves the whole community forward. Because you are bashing people so much so that they can't come in here and get a mission done. They're coming to serve. These people came in from all out of state, all across the nation. There were other ministers. There were people from other denominations. There were other cultures. There were other ethnicities that came to help them move this mission forward. They said, this is a great mission. We align with you in this mission. But had the church maintained this mentality that if you don't come in here with that skirt down to the floor, women ain't supposed to be wearing no pants. What you doing with them lipsticks on your lip? How dare you wear an afro when you know you're supposed to wear a press and curl? I mean, silly stuff. And I know somebody is laughing on the other end. And I'm saying it with a comedic relief, but I'm also saying it because it's still happening in 2023. I live in Alabama. I don't know where you're from, but I live in Alabama. And I'm going to these churches. I'm seeing what's happening. I'm seeing and I'm listening. I'm hearing the preachers bash the women over the pulpit. Man, do you know your whole congregation is made up of women? I don't see but two men in here. And women, what's wrong with you that you still sitting in here? Let him talk down and talk about you like this. And this is why some ministries, not all, are sinking ships. But someone is saying, well, why, Alabama church girl, do you think it's your mission to get on here and persecute the church? I'm not persecuting the church. I told you, my intention is to challenge our misguided behavior. My intention is to challenge this oppressive mindset, because the church, Black church, we have taken on an oppressive mindset, just like the projection. We looked at somebody else's way of doing things, and we decided we're going to do it that way, instead of going to God, laying on our face, and God saying, God, show me the way. Let your word be a lamp unto my feet. Let your word be a light unto my path. Show us the way. We got ministers, we got leaders who will not be led by God. Ask me how I know. Because if you had any spirit in you, those that are the laymen that are sitting in the pews, you need to know how to get to God for yourself. You need to know how to experience the Spirit of God for yourself. Because when you have the Spirit of God in you, you can't just follow anybody. Because you know that ain't it. That ain't God. No, sir. Don't lay no hands. Don't touch me. Because your spirit ain't got no God in it. I hear you. You got a good hoop. You got a good holler. You know how to shake the mic. But are you being led by the Spirit of God? And I mean on a daily basis. Because some people have been called to ministry, but somewhere along the way, they stopped following that pillar of fire by night. They stopped following that cloud by day. And now their people are stuck in a wilderness. They're stuck in a wilderness of wanting to be validated by the preacher. They're stuck in a wilderness of wanting to be liked by the first lady. They stuck in a wilderness of, don't you talk about my pastor. They stuck in a wilderness of, we got to get the pastor a Rolls Royce. Foolishness. Foolishness. Wilderness mentality. When God is out here making ways for people. When God is the way maker for people. And he's pleading with us. The Bible tells us that we'll get to a position where even the earth will moan and groan. And we see it happening. Storms coming up everywhere. We just had one come through Selma, right down the road. Storms coming up everywhere, the moaning and the groaning of the earth. Come on, y'all. Let me be your God. Come on, y'all. Will you be my people? Turn. If my people who are called by my name, y'all call yourselves Christians. You call yourself God's people, man of God, woman of God. But will you listen to me? Will you walk? My sheep know my voice. A stranger they don't follow. Walk with me. The earth is moaning. It's groaning. It is. It is. And if my people, which are called by my name, would humble themselves, pray, seek my face, turn, close that projection, turn from those wicked ways, repent. Come on, people. We need our land to be healed. I don't know about y'all, but I can't even trust what's being produced in the produce section because I don't know if the land is healed. We're growing gardens in the backyard because we don't know. We can't trust that. Is the land healed? For if are our sins really being forgiven? I know I got preachy, but that's who I am. I'm sorry. I'm the Alabama church girl. If you don't know, now you know. Nice to meet you. Every now and then I have to get a little preachy. I got to get a little deep because I'm here to challenge the consciousness of the church. The conscious of the church. Because we've gotten far from following the mind of God, being the heart of God in the community. I'm almost at the point where I want the government to tax the church. Why? Why not? Because the church is so far from accountability. We won't accept accountability. We won't allow ourselves to be rebuked. And we're not serving the people. The only reason there's a separation of church and state is because the church was supposed to be a service organization to the community. But can you say that your church is really serving your community? If the church door is closed on tomorrow, will you miss it? Will it have an impact on the families that are right in the neighboring vicinity? I mentioned to y'all last week how I went to a church, beautiful church, All these grand vehicles in the parking lot, but a shotgun house right next door. Prostitutes on the street. Is the church really having an impact in that community? I'm just saying. I'm going to get up off of it. But if you haven't had an opportunity yet, please go to Peacock TV and download this documentary. It's called Lowndes County: The Road to Black Power. I could go on and on because I didn't even get to how the Black Panther Party started right in Lowndes County. And it started right in church in Lowndes County. If you don't know the history, please go look at the documentary. And begin to just get you some books, get you some good books. I found a couple of other, I have a couple other suggestions for you. Um, this is another one that's a good one. Post traumatic slave syndrome. Dr. Joy DeGruy. This is a good book to help us get past the mentality of what this has done to our community, the effects that it's had on our community. Let's see. I got another one about Lowndes County. It's called The Informant. The Informant. And this is a member of the KKK's experience. And yeah, it's kind of thick. I ain't got all the way in it just yet, but get this one as well. From another perspective of why Lowndes County is called the Bloody Lowndes and some of the things that have happened. There's another one. It's too far for me to reach right now, but there's another book regarding. Would you hand me that book, that blue one, underneath the orange one? I'm sorry, y'all. I'm a nerd. So, the book is called "The Penalty for Success." My father was lynched in Lowndes County, Alabama. This is written by Josephine Bolin McCall. Get this one as well, telling the story of how her father gave the ultimate sacrifice in Lowndes County. This is why it's so important. When we tell our young people, hey, don't take it lightly and don't take it for granted. The sacrifices that others have made for you to have the freedoms that you have. This is important for us to know this rich history and to begin to share this rich history. Keep it going. Keep propelling it forward. Don't let your child be like I was, growing up into adulthood and don't know this history. Don't also the Bible even tells the children of Israel when they came out of the wilderness, when they came out of Egypt and the Passover, God told them then, make sure that you begin to write this on tablets and make sure you teach this to your children's children. And that same message holds tight and holds true to how God has brought us through civil rights movement. He brought us over then, but as we discussed on last week in our conversation about Black culture, we are perpetually overcoming. So, as the perpetual overcomers keep telling the stories of God, how God keeps bringing us out, we shall overcome someday. Let's keep this history going. Make sure you go and check out this documentary on Peacock TV. Once again, it's only $4.99 if you don't have Peacock, and it's worth every dime. It's worth every penny that you spend to watch this documentary. There's some more good documentaries coming up. I think it's already out. The Zora Neale Hurston. I think it came out. It came out today, or it's coming out. The 1619 documentary on Hulu is out. It came out on last week on the 26th, so go check that one out as well. This is history that we need to know, and this church, as a church that houses and supposed to serve the Black people, we definitely need to speak about this type of history within our institution. I love you guys. I hope you have enjoyed this taboo topic of the evening. I want to have a quick conversation. If you have not followed the Alabama Church Girl on TikTok and on YouTube, please follow, subscribe, because you never know. I'm putting out little information here and there and everywhere. You'll see me on Facebook. You'll see me on Instagram. You'll see me on YouTube. You'll see me on TikTok. but just make sure you're following all of those platforms of the Alabama Church Girl. If there are any questions, make sure you put those down in the chat. If there's a documentary that you want to discuss, put that down in the chat. I specifically am looking for history on church. Alabama is my focus, but I'm not opposed to other churches. I'm also specifically looking for documentaries on black folk, black history. Okay. That's my focus because that's my experience. I can talk about history on other cultures, but I'm not a part of those cultures, so I'm not going to be as well versed. I'm going to have a different perspective, and that's just not my zhuzh. Okay. I love you guys. I really, really do. And I appreciate you being here with us on this evening. Make sure you share this with your family and your friends. And I will see you on next Monday. Same time, same place. Love God. Love your families. Mwah! Bye.